Namaste everyone. We are now presenting class 2 in parts. Today we will be introducing one more asana, Parsvakonasana, and as to how to introduce our understanding of the femur being integrated in the hip socket. Let's start. To start with, I'd like to take our memory to the previous class where we started with swastikasana, where we put cross legs. That is, our legs were first crossed and then we drew our legs in and then we released the thigh down. Every asana has several approaches. There are multiple ways, a million ways of doing an asana depending on what principle we are choosing to accomplish. That is, whether, for example, femur being drawn in is a principle, is a point on which we are working. Opening the clavicles is a point on which we are working. Stabilizing the lumbar is a point on which we are working. So, these are various principles. So, depending on which principle we are choosing, which person and what their constitution is and what their chief problem or complaint is will manifest the variation of the asana that is being used. For today, we are presenting or we are adding one principle, that is how the femur needs to be integrated, and this we will carry through in our series from this point onwards. Any principle, once it's introduced, with that introduction we will add that to our body of work in the upcoming classes. So, all of our work is work in progress. We are not really showing the completion of an asana yet because there are so many nuances in doing an asana. We are adding point after point so that with every upcoming class we are able to add one more layer of depth and nuance. For today's class, it's about the hip joint and how the femur can integrate in the hip joint while also concentrating on the other foundational principles. To start with, we always start with swastikasana because that is the asana in which we say our invocation or prayer, but in adding to the fact that we are introducing the femoral integration, we will say or mention a variation of swastikasana which will then highlight that point. So, for today we are starting with our legs bent, and when our legs are bent we will move into swastikasana as if you are going to be keeping your legs hip width apart, as already said, where the outer foot, outer knee and outer hips are all in line. So, the guide here is how wide a person's hips are, and that is again very individualized. From the right outer hip to the left outer hip is the width of the hip of an individual, which is the same width of the outer knee, which is the same width as the outer foot. Here the knee should necessarily face the ceiling. If the knee clashes inward, it will pronate the foot and distort the ankle. Similarly, if the knee spills outward, it will supinate the foot and also distort the ankle. You want to make sure the knee is right in the center so that the bones of the legs are all evenly and medially aligned. Being in this position, you want to make sure that you are nicely raising the back of the pelvis up. You don't want to feel that the sacrum and tailbone, which are encased in the pelvis, dropping to the floor because the spine is not weighed down to sit upon. So, you must nicely lift the pelvis up so that you are keeping the sacrum and tailbone, that is the root of the spine, the base of the spine lifted. We always think of the spine as building blocks, where we have the tailbone, on top of which we have the sacrum, on top of which we have the lumbar vertebrae, thoracic vertebra, cervical vertebra. So, you want to feel the stacking, for which if the root of the spine is not properly stacked, then all the other vertebra above it will not align properly. So, you have to make sure that the pelvis is lifted up. Again, be cautious of the word up because up is not in at this point. In may overstrain the lumbar or make it over concave. So, it is really about going up where you feel the buttock muscle or gluteus muscles roll up to release the pelvis up. Now, being in that position, you are keeping your hands wide and lifting the chest up. Now, usually when you have your legs bent, there is a beautiful way of assessing for yourself how much you raise the spine. Let us say I use the thigh or the frontal face of the thigh as a witness. This thigh is static, it's not moving, it's a witness to a lifting spine. So, in case I measure and I say around the middle of the thigh is where her floating ribs are, and then if I raise her, ask her to lift her floating ribs up, then the floating ribs are not really aligning to the middle of the thigh anymore, they have lifted up against a certain upper part of the thigh. So, you can see that using your thigh as a witness or a static reference, you are able to feel the growth of the spine as against the thigh. So, we start off or use the bent leg position in this manner where the thigh helps us read the lift of the spine. So, against the thigh we want to see a lifted abdomen, against the thigh we want to see a lifted diaphragm, against the level of the thigh we want to see a lifted chest where the breast is almost above the level of the knee itself. From there the clavicles are well widened, the armpit really never stays stuck back because this really collapses the chest. You want to move the armpit from back to front and keep the clavicles well opened and the shoulder rolled back and down. In that position, we will first move into cross legs by dropping one knee, that is the left knee, so that you have a camera view, rolling out, as in the left knee externally rotates, and I will show you as well. You are sitting with your legs hip width apart and your left knee externally rotates. Once your left knee externally rotates, you are using the same hand, as in the left hand on the left foot, to hold your ankle and try to bring your foot underneath your thigh. But here it is not really about only bringing the foot underneath the thigh, because that becomes an action of the foot alone. Rather, we are thinking of swiping this femur, integrating it into the socket to bring our foot underneath the thigh. So, here the foot is coming, but I am trying to crop the femur into the socket to bring the foot underneath the thigh. I hope you can see the difference. Position 1, which is wrong, where I am only getting the foot underneath the thigh and my knee remains too wide in comparison to the hip. The second one, where yes, I am bringing the foot in, but the action comes from the femur integrating into the socket to get the foot underneath the thigh, and that is the way we want to do the swastikasana for today, where we are articulating the femur properly in the hip. On the other side, again the knee externally rotates, same hand, same foot, I am bringing the femur in to get the foot underneath the thigh. And then we then know that swastikasana as a pose is compact, slightly compact on the hip, where the knees are slightly wider than the hip, only a little bit. This would not be swastikasana, where the knees are too wide and the femur has no real association in the socket. This is not swastikasana. Swastikasana is where there is a slight compactness. Holding this, nicely raising the chest up, again feeling that the thigh is deeply rested downwards. Again, let me show you. If the thigh comes up and the thigh is agitated, as in it does not have a restive face, the thigh coming up will usually sink the spine down. If the thigh goes down, just like two sides of a seesaw, if the thigh goes down, then the spine has an ability to come up. Again, thigh up, spine goes down, thigh goes down, spine comes up. So, you want to make sure the thigh is released downward and the spine can be properly elevated. Therefore, it is always logical to use a support such as a bolster or a blanket underneath the hip to raise the spine up and keep the thigh down in case it does not naturally or organically happen, or if the student is finding it difficult. Please ensure that you are using height where the outer hip and outer knee are leveled so that the hip and spine can come up and the thighs can roll down. Again, holding that position, we are again establishing, once again going back, repeatedly revising that the clavicle is nicely open. As the right clavicle opens, the right breast opens. As the left clavicle opens, the left breast opens. So, the sternum remains an independently free pathway. This sternum is then able to lift up, back ribs are able to come in, and there is a nice lift of the abdomen away from the thigh, of the diaphragm away from the abdomen, and of the breast away from the diaphragm. So, again abdomen away from the thigh, diaphragm away from the abdomen, and breast away from the diaphragm towards the clavicle. Now, in this position of swastikasana, ideally we would bring the palms in front of the chest for an invocation, which we will visit in one of the upcoming videos, as I have already mentioned. Now, to proceed, we will then undo the legs to move into dandasan, where the first aspect is to raise the knee up. However, you want to now feel that the knee raises up and allows you to kind of have a mapping of the outer edge or the little toe side of the foot, as if when the knee comes up, you're able to mark and feel the outer or little toe edges of the foot, which is so important and so abundantly used in all asanas. So, feel that blade like sharp outer edge of the foot as you raise your knees up. Then, feeling that, we separate our legs once again hip width apart. Now, when you take your legs hip width apart, ideally when we go to dandasan, the knees and legs will be joined. So, we will be showing both variations, where she will show where the legs are hip width apart and I show where the legs are joined. Now, when we join our legs, which I will show you, initially the foot comes together. The feet coming in together is only an aspect of from the lateral edges sliding or bringing your foot to connect medially, where the big toe side and the inner heel side is connected. But getting the knees together is not the same action. It is not about clashing the knees together or over mobilizing the knee joint to clash. Rather, you want to feel that you're rolling the thigh in, rolling the thigh in, rolling the thigh in, and it is through the repeated rotation of the frontal thigh outside in that the knee joins. So, the joining of the knee is not really banging or slamming the knees together. Rather, we are trying to keep the knees from slamming. So, the knees are deliberately not hurried to join. You're rolling the thighs in, rolling the thighs in, rolling the thighs in, and then getting the knees to join. And this way of joining the legs is actually a good skeletal-muscular integration of the entire thigh and thigh muscles and not just the knee joint. Now, from this position, her action and mine will be the same. When you do it hip width apart, there is quite a proper way by which this action can be monitored. That is, the student will take a block, you will take a soft block and keep your knees just so wide apart that this block is just kind of able to slide in and out of the knee. You can hold it. Now, in this position, if she just brings or bangs the knee together, she is gripping the block simply by using the knee joint. There is no skeletal-muscular activation. Instead, if she keeps the block and she does not want to get the knees to clash towards each other, in fact, she is mindfully aware that she is not going to get the knees to be the first part to catch the blocks. Instead, she feels she is going to roll the thigh in, and through the rotation, internal rotation of the frontal thighs, if she is mindfully regulating that this action of holding the block comes from the internal rotation of the thigh and not by just an alienated action of the knee joint coming together, then it is actually creating skeletal-muscular awareness in the entire length of the thigh region. Holding this, she then raises her toes up, and then as she slides her leg away for dandasan, the intention is to create a long back leg. That is, from the back thigh to the back knee, you create length. From the back knee to the back calf, you create length. Then really the Achilles tendon is nicely lengthened so that your mind is thinking that the back of the leg is like an undammed, continuously flowing river. In fact, for a moment your mind must see that. Your mind must see that reference where the back of the thigh to the back of the knee to the back of the calf to the back of the heel, as if you're feeling a continuous pathway for extension. Now, let me show you this as an example. Suppose this is the back, her leg was bent, right? And this is the back of the leg and this is the front of the leg. Just like the leg is bent like this, back of the leg and front or top of the leg. If I create a continuous extension in this back face of the leg, continuous extension, then the front face of the leg integrates. That is exactly what we want from our dandasan. A profuse and continuous extension at the back face of the leg, where the front face of the leg integrates. And when that front face of the leg integrates, it has to continue with the rolling in of the thigh, so that there is the entire skeletal-muscular regulation where the frontal face of the thigh centers itself. You see here the frontal face of the thigh may be spilling out, but when I constantly rotate my thigh and keep the frontal face of my thigh centered, as I lengthen my leg out, there is a rotation within that length, and then the frontal thigh integrates into the length of the back thigh and the frontal shin integrates into the broadness of the back calf, keeping the toes quiet. You see how hard her toes were? You shouldn't do that. It's as if the toes are just gently stroking upwards. The toe remains quiet. Now in this position, I would like to add a little more detail. Now she is doing dandasan with a block. The block was given for us to understand how the femurs must rotate and the thigh must rotate outside in and the knee doesn't rush in. Now that we've done that, I'm going to gently remove the block, keeping the internal rotation and the length of the leg. As I told you, I would be showing that to you with the legs joint. So the feet join, the thighs roll in to join the knee, then raising the toe up, again length of the back leg, integration of the frontal leg into the back thigh, frontal shin, into the back calf, toes quiet. In this position, I want to introduce a 3 or a tripod contact of the foot. This is critical in any position where we use our legs. I just wanted to highlight that in standing poses, of course, we use our legs to stand. But even in Shirshasana or Sarvangasana, our legs have a great use. So even in those positions where even our legs, if they are not grounded, even in those positions, the 3-point contact or the tripod contact of the foot must be established. Let me talk about the points. Usually, a tripod contact is referred to as the big toe mound, where there is the big toe and then there is the mound of the big toe, and then it is mentioned as the little toe mound, the mound of the little toe, and then the heel bone or the calcaneus. But in yoga, we have one additional point. Now, you can also try. If we take our hand and run it through the outer edge of the foot, run it through the outer edge of the foot a couple of times, you will find a slightly protuberant bone right at the outer edge of the foot. And now I'm going to keep my hand on it, right? That outer edge of the foot is the 5th metatarsal, which in Iyengar Yoga we commonly refer as the outer foot bone. And this point is crucial for us to understand in our standing poses, especially to grip our foot nicely down so that our foot doesn't slide or lose its sensitivity. So this outer edge of the foot. So big toe mound, yes. Little toe mound, yes. Heel bone, yes. But in addition, this tuberosity or the outer edge of the 5th metatarsal in the outer edge of the foot. Now when you sit in dandasan, join your legs. You will make sure the foot, as I said, the toes don't overarch or stiffen, the toes stay quiet. Now keeping the toes quiet, many times you will see for a person that this inner edge of the foot shrinks back and the outer edge of the foot comes forward. This again happens through repetitive misuse of the foot and improper weight bearing over many years, and this has to be corrected. This big toe mound has to come forward. The heel bone has to be centered and projected forward, which means the inner ankle and outer ankle are lengthening. One either this way or either that way, the ankle is not shortening. It's as if two equal arrows project the heel bone forward. So, heel bone, big toe mound we have seen. This little toe mound and outer edge of the foot which come forward if the leg is mispositioned or shortening, these two edges need to slightly articulate backward so that the sole of the foot is leveled. So, this is a leveled sole of the foot with the heel bone forward, big toe mound forward, outer little toes mound in line with the big toe mound not projecting forward, and the outer or fifth metatarsal holding back. This leveled foot must be watched and understood for your view, for your vision in dandasan, so that when we call for it in standing poses, you are able to relate to it better.